Nothing feels warmer than adding a little stitching to the background of your card project. And when making any kind of card throughout the winter, stitching can make the card feel like a warm winter quilt. Today on Stamp TV, I'm going to show you a great way to add some stitching to your backgrounds and make use of some of your valuable pattern paper scraps. Let me show you the tools and products you're going to need to do this technique. First, you're going to need some scraps. And what I've done here is I've cut some strips 1 inch wide, and these three different pattern papers came from the Nature's Greeting pattern paper pack and the Wishing You Joy pattern paper pack. They seem to be two pattern paper packs I'm using a lot of these days, and I have lots of these little strips cut off, so I'm going to use those up. Then you're going to need a piece of cardstock, and I'm using the Gina Designs Pure Luxury layering weight cardstock. You want to make sure your cardstock's not too thick for the stitching part. So the 80-pound layering weight is perfect. And I've cut this to 5 inches by 3 3/4 inches. And the reason why I chose 5 inches is because I'm using 1-inch strips, so then I know 5 of them will perfectly line up on this background. Then you're going to need some Scotch tape, and you're going to need some type of adhesive, and I'm using the mono adhesive, the dot style. So to begin, I'm going to lay out my different patterns, and I want to alternate them and make sure that they're not too consistent, kind of like a quilt. So I think what I'll do is I'll just do that, just like that, and lay it out, see how it looks. I really like the way all these patterns go together. My next step is to start taping, and I don't need to use a ton of mono adhesive. I just need to use enough so that I can tape this down and it'll stay secure enough while I'm sewing. And I'm going to put that in the top corner there. Actually, I'm just going to make sure that it's flush up against the top, and you can see that that's right flush up against the top. Now for my next piece, I'm just going to line that up right next to that one. Like that. My next piece, I'm going to do the same thing. Same thing. Lay it up against there and then lay it flat. Now for my next step, I'm going to grab my paper cutter, and because I've already made the paper the right size, that'll be easy. I just have to kind of line that little edge up like that. So now you can see where that's lined up just to where the cardstock ends. And you're going to have to eyeball that, but you'll be able to do that with no problem. And then just cut away all those little excess edges. So now that's a nice smooth edge. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Line it up. And once again, now that's a nice rectangle. But you can see I extended a little bit below that one because some strips might be just a tiny bit bigger than 1 inch, and then when you line them all up, you actually have a little bit hanging over. So I'm going to take that piece of cardstock right to 5 inches and just trim away that little bit of excess. And now I have a perfect panel ready to be stitched. Now when it comes to thread colors, I like to choose one of the lighter colors from one of the patterns and pick a thread color to match. So I've picked this, it's almost like a cotton candy colored pink in this plaid pattern. So I'm using a cotton candy pink thread, as you can see, and that's a real nice match. So I'm going to tilt the machine up. As you can see, I've taken the center seam between the two pieces of pattern paper, and I've lined that right up with the center split on my presser foot of my machine. Now as long as I keep that line in the center of the line in the center of the presser foot, I'm going to have a perfect zigzag stitch that's going to be even on both sides. So I'm going to stitch all these lines up, and then I'm going to show you what to do next. Now once you've finished making all of your center seams, the next step is to trim the excess off, but leaving enough left over so you can tuck it around the back of your card. So here I'm just trimming both sides down just a little bit. And now my next step is to take a little bit of that Scotch tape and I'm going to fold these over. And I can do 2 at a time here. Fold 2 over and tape them down like that. And that's going to finish off your edge really nicely, and it's also going to prevent fraying because this is going to be secured to the back. So there's 2 more. I'll do the other side. 2 more. And the final 2. Okay. Now next I've cut a piece of paper, and again it's the layering weight paper because I want to keep this paper as thin as I can for sewing. And I've made this one a 1/4 inch bigger all around. So this piece measures 5 by 3 3/4. This piece measures 5 1/4 by 4. And that's going to give me a nice margin around the outside so I can stitch the outside completely. But first I need to tape this on. So I'm going to do that with a little bit of mono adhesive. And again, I don't have to use a ton of it and get it all around the edges since I'm going to be using the sewing machine to really secure it down. So let's line that up. Okay, like that. And now my next step is to sew around the perimeter of this card. And again, let me show you close up. What I've done here is I've lined up this piece of pattern paper and the white frame, so the center between them where those 2 parts meet, that's in the center of my presser foot. And that's going to enable me, as long as I stay in there, to get a nice straight stitch. So I'm going to stitch around this card, and then I'm going to show you how to attach it to a card base. Now I've gone all the way around the perimeter of the card, and I have a few little threads left here at the bottom. So I'm just going to snip those off. And I actually lock the stitch at the bottom by stitching forward a couple stitches and then going backward a couple stitches. And that will lock your stitch, so this way you don't have to worry about it unraveling. And that also made sure that this piece of pattern paper is attached to this card panel. Now I found a really pretty card base made out of our lipstick red cardstock that matches so nicely. And I'm just going to pop that panel right on there using some mono adhesive. And that's pretty simple to do. And I'm going to put that right on there. And now that panel, that card, you don't see any stitching on the inside, but it's perfect, ready for a focal image and a greeting, and then it'll be ready to send. Now let me show you my finished card project. What I've done here is I used our brand new stamp duo called Close Knit Friends, and I've stamped the little basket of balls of yarn, colored that in with some Copic markers, and then I used the classic Circles Nestabilities dies to cut these 2 circles out, the one in white and the one in lipstick red. And then I've used the lacy circle die to go around the outside. Then I stamped the greeting from the Close Knit Friends stamp set duo on one of these ribbon tags and used a little bit of our craft double-stitched ribbon to accent that tag and give it even more of a fabric-y, homey feel. Anytime you seem to have lost your stamping mojo, grab your scrap box and your sewing machine and make up a bunch of these panels. Sometimes that's just what you need to get the creative juices flowing, and then you'll always have warm and cozy backdrops on hand for lots of future card projects.